Hey guys, Ricky Howard here, and welcome to this week's episode of DoD Contract Academy. This week we're doing something a little bit different. So we're talking about requests for information and sources sought responses, but we're also doing a response. So I'm going to walk you through essentially how you can respond to one of these market research requests from the government in a time-efficient manner. So maybe before we get into this, why do you even want to do this? So if you listen to the podcast, you know where I'm going with this. But essentially, we want to make sure that we are finding opportunities before an official solicitation comes out from the government. So before the request for proposal, before the request for quote, we want to know when the agency that we're trying to work with has an opportunity for us. And there's a few ways we can do that. I cover those in other episodes, but one of those ways is looking for something called an RFI, or a sources sought. There's a lot of reason the government puts these out there. Sometimes they're looking to see what types of companies can respond and respond successfully to what they need, whether it's a product or a service. Meaning, is it a small business? Can they set this aside for a woman-owned small business? Often what they're looking for are what are the technologies available and what are the specifics that they should put into the solicitation when it comes out, right? So that's something that is underestimated by most businesses. And what I mean by that is usually the program manager on the government side is not the subject matter expert in what they're putting on contract, nor is the contracting officer. Typically, that team is the expert at putting companies on contract for the government and managing those programs. You could have a contracting officer, especially across their career, working everything from civil engineering to cybersecurity to, weapons that we're, selling overseas in our foreign military sales programs. So you get the point. The expertise is in the contracting process itself on the government side, typically, not necessarily the actual technology, solutions, services that are involved. That's your expertise. So that's what they're trying to find out from you. And what you want to do is you want to first let the government know you're there. So we know relationships are a big part of selling. So this is a way to start a relationship if you don't have one with an agency. It's a way to tell them that you can do the work, but it's also a way to cook into when a solicitation does come out, you're telling them the things you want in there, right? So if you're writing this well, you're informing them, hey, I want you to put the certifications that my guys have if I'm providing services. Or, if you have a technology that's really unique, you can say things like, hey, we have this technology, it solves the problem of X, Y, and Z. It doesn't exist anywhere else, but we've used it successfully here. Maybe use some past performance. Use cases are really important. But, in the best case scenario, you might find that you don't even have to go to a competition. The government can just hire your company if you're the only solution. But the government doesn't know if you're the only solution unless you respond to something like this. In most cases, though, you're helping the government write the solicitation. So, you're developing that relationship. So by the time it comes out, by the time an RFP comes out, they know who you are. You've helped them write the solicitation. Maybe a few of your points got put in there. It helps eliminate competition. It helps inform the government of what they should really be putting on contract. And it helps you, in the end, win your contract. So now that we've basically said why we're responding, you're busy, I'm busy, right? So if you're running a business, you probably don't have time to be sitting there looking for these opportunities, putting a response together. Some of these RFI responses can be, something you work days on, right? And you probably don't have that much time. Now, if you're a business, you're up and running, you have a team, ideally you get to the place where you have a business development and sales team for the federal government. But even for them, this takes a long time. So how can we do this effectively and efficiently, whether you have a team or it's just you? And I'm going to tell you some of the ways that you can do that, some of the ways that I do that. And I'm going to walk you through it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently because I'm going through some of the websites I use. So, number one, searching for opportunities. Lots of ways you can do that. I've gone over tools on some of the podcasts that I use. This is a way to get somebody else to do it for you, right? So I'm on the Upwork website. If you're not familiar with that, this is a place where you can either work as a freelancer or you can hire freelancers to work for you. And you can get expertise varying from, entry level type work all the way to PhD level, people in the US that can really put solid products, written products, research products together for you. I mean, you can find someone to do just about anything that's legal on Upwork. And I use this tool all the time. I really love it. And so I'm on the website. I'm not going to go into my account. I'm just saying I use this to hire people to find opportunities for me to engage on. I have to train them a little bit, so this is at the lower level. I'm not breaking the bank on it. And I also hire people sometimes to generate the RFI response itself. Now, I do that in two ways. I can hire somebody for, higher dollar, right? Meaning I might be spending $1,000 for somebody to generate a small RFI response. And that might be someone with a master's degree that really understands the solution, that can give me the 95% solution, really. I can take it, check it, switch a few things around after I've worked with them, and then submit. That's great. And if you're in a pinch, or if it's something that you really want to make sure that you're nailing, you can do that. At the other end, you can hire somebody that maybe is going to be a lot cheaper, doesn't have the technical prowess, right? But you could train them how to write an RFI, so they could find it for you and they can put the general structure of the document together. They might give you the 40% solution, then you go in there and you fix it from there. But that in itself is a huge time save, and you might spend $50 in total for somebody to do that for you. But it's $50 well spent, in my opinion. So, okay, so we're on Upwork here. There's a lot of different things you can do. There's a way to search for talent and projects. I'm not going to get into how to use Upwork, just that you can use it for this type of thing. And there's a lot of different areas, from finding opportunities to actually doing the writing. Now, I've hired somebody on there that I work with, and now I'm on an email. If you're listening to this on the podcast, it's just an email I got this morning, and this is why I decided to do this episode. So, hey, Rick, here's an opportunity that requires, it's a data scraping, data collection management system, sam.gov. He gives me the link, and I taught him how to do this. And so now I go and I see that, I go to sam.gov and I see this is a Department of Energy opportunity. Just what he said, data collection, he said scraping. It says data collection, data management software. Now, this one is a lot different than a normal RFI or sources sought response. It's also part of the reason I'm bringing it up here, because a normal RFI or sources sought, it's going to have attachments. It's going to have a lot more information than this one has. It's going to give you, a lot of the questions. Sometimes it'll just give you a list of 10 questions they want answered. In this case, all it does is gives me a one-sentence description that they really should have spell checked before they even put on here. It says the subcontractor will develop, he has an S at the end of there. I probably shouldn't be criticizing them, but the subcontractor will develop customized software tools, in quote, spiders, to automatically navigate and gather data from retail. Now, that why that happened. It's because I started criticizing the way they wrote, and now I'm talking like, that guy from the Looney Tunes, retail websites. So gather data from retail websites, and they provide an online platform for managing and running the software. Okay, so it's a little bit two things, right? So it's going to retail, something that can go to retail websites and gather data, and there has to be some type of user interface and platform to manage the software is what I'm guessing. Now, if I was seriously interested in submitting something on this, I would be reaching out. I won't go too into it, but it has the point of contact at the bottom here on sam.gov. You can go to it if you want to look at it. This is due on, let's see here. It's due on June 13th, and I think it's June 9th today. So depending on when you hear this, it'll probably be past due. But again, the beauty of a sources sought is this isn't the solicitation. So a response to this is probably not going to equal a contract. The solicitation will probably come out in a few months or 6 months or whenever it is. So I would probably reach out to the contact here and ask them clarifying information. Hey, did you guys forget to put the more information in here? Did you forget to put an attachment in? Did you even mean to post this? So those are some initial questions I have right now. But, and you could do that. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. I just want to show you how I'm going to start generating a response here. I did want to go because I certainly am familiar with the Department of Energy, but Berkeley National Lab, if I just want to, without talking to anyone first, I might want to know what their mission is. This is actually really good to talk about, because I can remember being in the Air Force, having my acquisitions branch that I was running, and companies that understand what they need to do to sell to the government know that they need to target offices and get meetings. And one of my pet peeves is if a company scheduled a meeting with me, and I took those. The government should be taking government acquisitions offices are going to take meetings with companies that approach them that makes sense. But I remember I took a few meetings with companies that I probably shouldn't have because they weren't prepared. They didn't even know what my office did. They were just hunting, right? So it was very, I don't want to say selfish, but that's what it was. They were looking for leads. They didn't know what we did. They didn't do any work on their own to figure out what my office did. And that really irritated me. And I never talked to them again after that. So what you want to do, and I'm just using that as an example, know who you're actually engaging with, right? So if you think that this is part of it, right? So if they came to me and they found an RFI that I put out there and wanted a meeting, well, now that's something a lot different. So you're already ahead of the game here. We know that they have a solution. I Googled that lab because I want to know what their mission is. And here at the Berkeley lab, it says, our research focuses on discovery science and solutions for clean energy and a healthy planet. So how does that apply to this? To really know, I need to talk to them. But if this is taking information from retail websites, I'm guessing it has something to do with, maybe it's looking for solutions that help improve the planet, or maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe it's going to retail websites looking for products that contain certain things that aren't good for the planet, right? Like I just heard a How I Built This episode, which, by the way, is my favorite podcast with Guy Raz, and they interview tons of businesses but also companies that have like new technologies, new things. And they did one recently on a company that they're basically, I think it said, it was kind of tongue in cheek, but I think their product is called Saving the Effing Planet with, they don't use the actual swear word, but essentially, so if you want to look it up, but essentially what they were doing is they're talking about palm oil, and palm oil, apparently it's a huge problem with deforestation in rainforests, and like palm oil's in everything. I never even heard of it, but apparently it's in everything from food to lipstick. And it's just this odorless oil that just makes stuff work really well. Products work really well. And the problem is that it grows, this plant grows near the equator. And what countries are doing is burning down the rainforests so they can basically set up these palm fields where they're growing the palm plants or trees and then harvesting them and turning it into this oil, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Anyway, so it was about this company that was trying to bioengineer the oil, and so we wouldn't have to get it from trees. And it sounds like they were actually doing really well with that. Neither here nor there. I'm just using that as an example of, hey, maybe this is looking for products that contain palm oil, and because they're doing research, we really don't know, and the only way to know is to ask. But I'm going to go with it's probably something like that. Now, how am I going to write this RFI? This really gives me nothing. It gives me no page count. It gives me no questions to answer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I can do a couple things here. I can respond to the guy I hired, and I can tell him, hey, generate me a 5-page response based on information that I provide him. So he knows my consulting business. He knows some of the technologies that I work with. You want to just make sure that if you're dealing with someone on Upwork, I'm always very careful, right? So I never give them the information on my clients. And if I'm going to talk anything beyond something that they can just pull up on the web, then you can make them sign an NDA. You have to be even more careful if you're dealing with someone from another country, especially if you're talking about selling to the government. So just make sure that you're putting everything in check. But for something like this, I'm going to just generate it myself. I'm going to show you another way to do this. So you could hire someone on Upwork to generate their response, okay? And you can go that way. You could, I'm going to go to, you may remember that we had somebody from Use Rogue, it was the owner of the company, on one of the episodes. And Use Rogue is a AI tool that helps you write RFI responses, source of sought responses, and proposals. And actually, he does a really good job of, I'll see his posts on LinkedIn where he'll just show how he writes an entire thing in 90 minutes. I'm not going to write the entire thing here, but I am going to show you, if you're watching this, you're going to see what we can do. So what is and by the way, this is my account. So, I pay for an account here, but I'm just showing you how this might work, right? So I want to generate a new document, and it will auto create a draft for me if I want to. It has a document title, description, and template. So the description, we know it's like one sentence, right? So I just cut and pasted it right in there. I can go back to the document title, and it was data collection and data management software. Okay. So going back to use Rogue, I'm going to just plug that right into the title. Now, since I'm writing this from scratch and they gave me very little, usually you're going to have some guidance with these. You're going to have a lot more than what I've got here, which makes me think that they may have even posted this mistakenly. I don't know. So we are going to have a, let's see, intro section. And basically in this section, you can just type the, I don't know, the framework that you want the RFI to have, or, the table of contents essentially, right? So I might have, let's say, introduction. You're going to hear me type. My wife says that I type louder than anybody she's ever heard, and it really annoys her. So if you're hearing me type right now, that's what's going on. So we've got introduction. Next, we're usually talking about the technology requirements, the technical capabilities. So I might say technology overview. Three, I might talk about it. Sometimes in an RFI, you can go into cost. I don't like to go into cost in an RFI unless I have to, but I do love to show use cases. Maybe if you've been doing this a while, you might have contract vehicles. So I might put in a section like recommended, and I'm just doing this in real time, right off the cuff. Recommended contracting strategy. I might change this later, but and I typed it all. I misspelled everything. What else might God, I keep spelling this wrong, guys. Okay. Recommended contracting strategy. And I could just say synopsis down here at the end. I may want to include certifications that we have. I may want to include a recommended set aside, and I can put that in contracting strategy as well. For something like this, are you partnering or teaming? You might put a section in that talks about partnering or teaming, but I'm just going to put synopsis now. Okay, so basically I have a 5-parter here to start things off. So introduction, technology overview, use cases, recommended contracting strategy, synopsis. And I'm going to hit create, and we're going to see what happens here. So use Rogue is now thinking about it. All right. And now it's actually starting to write a draft of what this response could look like. It starts off in today's data-driven world, businesses need to constantly gather and analyze information to make data-informed decisions. And then it goes into, now this may or may not, again, this is just a starting point, right? But, it's coming up with its own ideas about what should go in here, right? And that's just based on the way the software was created. But it seems to know something a little bit about web crawlers and spiders, because it actually, this is interesting. So if you're listening to the podcast, despite the fact that I only put in 5 bullets, so it didn't just generate like a Word document with 5 bullets. It generated an introduction with a whole paragraph, then a technology overview. Now, I put nothing in here regarding the technology, so it has no idea what my technology is. Now, for this section, for this demonstration, right? But I do want to point out, one of the beauties of Use Rogue is it will remember the documents that you put in. So you can set up a section where, let's say that you've been doing this for a while, you can load all your RFI and proposals if you want to, and it will remember all of that, and it can use it when it generates these type of documents. I believe it's the beta mode, so if I'm getting it wrong, then my apologies. But there is a beta mode in here that will build off of everything you've put in, so it can start generating. Like if I'll just call it the Ricky Howard technology, right? So if I have the Ricky Howard technology, I could highlight that, and it will expand it, and it could probably, and I could just start typing, it would define it for me. I could probably do a page, it'll automatically put it in there. So this is giving me technology overview, but beneath that, it just came up with its own subsections. 2.1, web crawlers and spiders. 2.2, data extraction and parsing. 2.3, data storage management. 2.4, online platform. Use cases. So I'm going to have to obviously get in here because it doesn't know what my use cases are, but it generated its own. It generated 5 use cases. Number 4, recommended contracting strategy. So it generated, and this is the beauty of using a tool that's designed for government contracting, this automatically put in a recommended contracting strategy. Now, this isn't the one I want, right? Because I have my own vehicles that I use, and I'm probably going to recommend a sole source contract to me if I'm submitting this, right? You got to be careful about that. If you have to have a way to actually, you don't recommend a sole source contract if a bunch of companies can do this. But if you have a way for the government to give you a sole source contract, like if you've ever won a SBIR, you can probably use that SBIR contract language to get a sole source. If you're 8A, that's another way to do it. If you have contract vehicles, you can recommend those. So there's lots there. And then it gave me a synopsis. So again, I'm not going to write the entire thing here, but now I've got a solid page, maybe more, where that I can build off of, right? And I can say, I'm going to do this just for everyone watching online, and if you're listening. So I have an introductory paragraph that looks like it's about 5 sentences long. If I go to the top, I've got something that will expand content, something that will make it more concise, and it says I can paraphrase it. So I'm going to hit expand on the introduction. Like, think about how powerful this is if you have 10 proposals you've written or RFI responses in there, right? And it can take that information and start rewording it and putting that in here. So it just basically more than doubled the initial paragraph. Now I'll have to read through this and see how good it actually is. But some other things that we can do here is I'm going to, let's say, because if you're responding to something from the National Science Foundation, right, which we did some of those recently. Well, those have, and by the way, check out that website, National Science Foundation, SPIRs. They have a really cool way of engaging with them because, and this is just added bonus for this episode, instead of having to write a proposal, you can basically write them answer 4 questions and see if they even like your solution, your technology or solution. I know we're getting off track here with SBIRs, but they have word limits, right? So you might do the technology overview and it has a maximum of 500 words. So with something like that, so I'm going to take this, I don't know how many words are here. I just highlighted it. Now I can go into the box next to it, and it remembers that I highlighted the text, and I'm going to say rewrite. So this is 500 words. Okay, and now it's starting to do just that. I mean, what a time saver that is, right? You could basically, if I really wanted to focus, and I'm doing a podcast and I'm doing this at the same time, but if I really wanted to focus on this for an hour, I could have especially considering how brief the summary was, I could put an entire submission together and get that in there. And it's still writing. So again, use Rogue, really interesting. Check it out. Check out my website, dodcontract.com. We have courses on there. We have, if you want to work with us, we can help put your strategy together. We also have, for some companies where, if you're a startup, maybe you don't have the funding and you're looking for help, you'd like to get into the federal government, we do have some equity and cost sharing plans available for the right company. That's not going to be for everybody, but if it's something that you think you want to team up on and go after some government R&D funds and start winning some contracts, it's something that we might be able to talk about. But check out the other episodes on the podcast. Please leave a review and subscribe. That really helps. Let us know if this was a good episode for you, if there's other topics you want to talk about. Would love to discuss, and that's how we get a lot of our ideas. So thanks again. We'll see you next week, and we have some awesome guests coming up, and I'm looking forward to sharing those interviews with you. And we'll see you next time.